Okay, let's unpack this. We are embarking on a deep dive today into a case that is, well, it's far more than just another true crime story. It's really a terrifying illustration of how a digital safety net, something designed for protection, actually became the crucial evidence trail in a truly horrific act of violence.
Indeed. We're meticulously analyzing the case of Sade Robinson. This all happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, just back in the spring of 2024. And this investigation, it really hinges almost entirely on this vast, undeniable digital footprint. I mean, it tracked a first date hour by hour, minute by minute, right up until that moment of silence.
Yeah.
Our sources, they include detailed true crime documentary transcripts, police reports, legal filings. They let us reconstruct a timeline that's just, well, it's as precise as it is devastating.
That's the gravity of it, isn't it? So our mission here is to really dig into these sources, piece together the exact sequence of events, understand the frankly overwhelming circumstantial evidence that led to Maxwell Anderson's conviction, and look at the pretty sophisticated forensic challenges the prosecution had to navigate.
And for you, the listener, this case is essential study, really. It shows how modern forensic investigation has evolved. You know, when direct physical evidence is complicated or it's fragmented, maybe deliberately destroyed, these digital breadcrumbs like GPS tracking from an app, municipal surveillance cameras, they become the ultimate unbiased witnesses in court.
So let's lay out the basic facts right away. Sade Carlina Robinson, just 19 years old, a really promising college student, went missing on April 2nd, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
The discovery of dismembered remains quickly confirmed the absolute worst fears. The suspect, 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson, was arrested within days and later found guilty on all counts. First-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson. And it was a conviction achieved based almost entirely on that movement data.
A conviction based on just a crushing weight of circumstantial evidence. It was so powerful, the jury reached a unanimous verdict in, under an hour of deliberation spread across 2 days? It's pretty remarkable. Yeah. And to truly appreciate the scale of this loss and, frankly, the success of the investigation, we have to start with Sade Robinson herself.
Right. Let's do that. Sade Robinson was clearly a young woman with tremendous focus. She wasn't just, drifting. She had a path.
Oh, definitely. And an impressive path it was. She was a criminal justice student at Milwaukee Area Technical College, MATC, people know it as. And she was literally weeks away from getting her Associate of Arts degree when she disappeared.
Just weeks away.
Yeah. And her future was planned out. She wanted to join the U.S. Air Force. It was a family tradition, really. Her grandfather was a Navy veteran, her uncle an Army veteran. She was following in those footsteps.
And the sources, they really paint this vibrant picture of her personality. Descriptions like magnetic smile, incredible drive, genuine kindness. I mean, she held down 2 demanding jobs to pay for her future. One as a cashier at Pizza Shuttle, and a second one at the Wisconsin Country Club.
And those little anecdotes, shared by friends and family, they really highlight her character. The documentary transcripts mention how she'd often take leftover pizza from her job and give it to unhoused folks outside the restaurant.
That says a lot.
It does. That level of sort of grounded generosity and just reliability, it's key. Because it explains why her family, her coworkers, they immediately knew something was terribly wrong when she didn't show up.
Which is the pivot point, isn't it? For the whole investigation kicking off. Her last known interaction with family was just laughing with them at an Easter gathering on March 31st. Her mother, Sheena Scarborough, she testified Sade was meticulous about communication, always shared her plans.
Always.
So when she missed her shift at Pizza Shuttle, her coworkers didn't wait. They raised the alarm right away, and that initiated the crucial welfare check that got law enforcement involved.
And that quick alarm, combined with her known routine, it meant the investigation could start almost immediately. That's not always the case in missing persons situations. Sometimes days are lost. Now, about the suspect connection. This wasn't some random encounter. Sade and Maxwell Anderson, he was 33, a bartender they had met before. Just a few days earlier, March 29th, at Victor's nightclub, Anderson actually worked there part-time.
Okay.
And they exchanged texts after that meeting to set up this date for April 1st.
And here we come to the digital safety net we mentioned, the Life 360 app, an app designed, ironically, for family location sharing, to give parents peace of mind.
Exactly. But in this case, it became the prosecution's star witness, essentially.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely. The Life 360 data gave investigators this precise, chronological, geographically accurate account of Sade's movements. Think about the legal weight of that. it's objective, it's time-stamped. Unlike human eyewitnesses, it can't get confused or be biased.
Right.
If that phone battery hadn't died when it did, the app probably would have tracked the perpetrator's every single move afterwards. It really provided the spine for the prosecution's whole circumstantial case.
Okay, let's walk through that timeline then. The date itself, April 1st. Where did it start? Around 5 p.m., right?
Yeah, the first stop was Twisted Fisherman. It's a seafood place in the Menomonee Valley. And the surveillance footage here was really important because it established, the initial normalcy of the date. Anderson knew the place. He'd worked there before, so maybe that put him at ease.
They got there around 5:0, stayed for about an hour and a half. Surveillance showed them eating, chatting. Crucially, no signs of any tension, no argument. Just looked like a standard, maybe a little formal first date.
Mm-hmm.
So that visual evidence kind of debunked any potential defense claim that maybe the evening started off badly or with some kind of conflict.
Right. So they left there before 6:30 p.m., driving in Sade's car, her 2020 Honda Civic. Their second stop was Duke's on Water, a downtown bar. Kind of a younger, more social vibe there. And this is where things maybe started to shift a bit.
Okay, how so?
Well, they drank, they played beer pong, and the documentary transcripts noted that Anderson was seen taking extra shots, so perhaps increasing his intoxication level, maybe his volatility. We don't know for sure, but it's noted.
Right. And they were caught on camera leaving that bar at 9:03 p.m., heading straight towards Anderson's place on the south side.
And here is that critical transition. From public view to private space, but it's mapped precisely by the GPS. The Life 360 app pinged Sade's phone at Anderson's home by 9:24 p.m.
Okay, so about 20 minutes travel time. That sounds right for the route.
Exactly. And this is where the physical surveillance and the digital evidence overlap in this really chilling way.
Because neighborhood cameras caught something, too.
Yeah, cameras picked up two figures, presumed to be Sade and Anderson, going into the side yard. Then a light turns on inside the house, and this marks the beginning of what we call the crucial gap, the time window where the state alleges the murder actually occurred.
Right, inside the house. So what do we know about activity during that gap?
Well, we know there was movement inside the house tracked somehow until 12:47 a.m. But the surveillance also caught something else, a brief but potentially really significant exit and return. Someone left the side yard around 11:05 p.m. and came back by 11:47 p.m.
A 22-minute window there. Why was that considered so important by the prosecution? What did they think was happening?
Well, they speculated heavily on that. Given the sheer brutality of what happened next, the prosecution suggested this 22-minute window might have been used to get materials needed for the subsequent acts.
Like what?
Maybe gasoline, cleaning supplies, perhaps items used later in the dismemberment or disposal. It introduces this element of, well, maybe early premeditation or at least a moment of cold calculation after whatever initial assault might have occurred.
Okay. Then we get to the post-midnight journey. 12:47 a.m., Sade's Honda Civic pulls away from Anderson's house. But we know, based on later evidence, Anderson was driving it at this point.
That's correct. And her phone's GPS data then traces this deliberate kind of winding path through the city. First, it heads towards Pleasant Valley Park. The phone was tracked there at 1:33 a.m., just a brief stop.
Okay.
Then the car headed sharply south towards Warmont Park in Cudahy. It arrived there at 2:45 a.m.
In Warmont Park.
Yeah.
That's the location with the really steep, rugged bluff, right? Like 100 feet down to Lake Michigan.
Exactly. And surveillance footage from nearby Cudahy High School provided this horrifying visual confirmation of the digital data. The cameras caught the car near the park's pump house. And starting at 3:02 a.m., the footage showed a figure later identified by clothing and gait analysis as Anderson going down that steep, dark bluff towards the shoreline.
And the most disturbing part here, the detail about the trips down the bluff.
Yes. The figure made multiple trips, down and back up that bluff between 3:02 a.m. and 4:01 a.m., over an hour and a half.
Wow. Multiple trips. In the pitch dark, down a 100-foot bluff.
That detail is absolutely key, and it's why the prosecution argued premeditation and control. I mean, navigating that terrain in the dark, making multiple trips, presumably carrying or disposing of remains, it suggests this high level of deliberate, strenuous, sustained effort.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like panic.
No. This wasn't a panicked, haphazard disposal. This looks like a calculated attempt to scatter evidence across Lake Michigan. The sheer effort involved implies hours of planning and execution, which really helps cement that intentional homicide charge.
So the car finally left Warmont Park at 4:31 a.m. And then just minutes later, 4:36 a.m., Sade's phone battery dies. Its last known location pinged near the park. The digital trail goes cold there.
The digital trail ends, yes, but the criminal activity clearly continued.
So the next morning, April 2nd, the evidence of what happened starts surfacing across Milwaukee, starting with her car.
Right. At 7:32 a.m., the Milwaukee Fire Department gets a call about a car fire near 30th and Lisbon. That's about 10 miles from Anderson's house and nowhere near Warmont Park.
And it's Sade's Honda Civic, engulfed in flames, clearly an attempt to destroy evidence.
A very deliberate attempt. But despite the intense fire, investigators managed to recover some critical items from the trunk.
What did they find?
Well, they found Sade's personal effects. Remnants of her ripped jeans, the white shirt she wore on the date matching the surveillance footage from earlier, along with the heavily damaged pieces of her iPhone.
Wow. Even after that fire.
Yeah. The heat damage obviously made DNA analysis difficult, but the physical presence of her clothing was undeniable. And there was a witness account here that became crucial.
The person who saw someone leave the car.
Exactly. A witness saw a white male wearing a distinct gray hoodie and carrying a tan backpack get out of the car, toss something like a lighter back inside, and then just calmly walk away as it burned.
That description, gray hoodie, tan backpack, becomes key later.
Absolutely. So that discovery, combined with the missing person report that her coworkers had already filed because they were so worried, it escalated everything to a high-priority situation. But the most devastating discovery came later that afternoon, back at Warmont Park.
The place tracked by the GPS in the early morning.
The very same place. At 5:29 p.m., a parkgoer finds something horrific. A severed human leg, sawn off at the hip, lying about 2/3 of the way down that steep 100-foot bluff.
Right where the GPS data and the high school camera footage showed activity around 3 a.m.
Precisely. Forensic analysis quickly confirmed the limb belonged to Sade Robinson. This confirmed the digital timeline was accurate and that the activity seen on the bluff was, in fact, the dismemberment and disposal of her body. The pieces were just clicking into place with terrifying speed.
The search effort after that initial find must have been huge.
Oh, it was massive. And sustained. It really indicated how severe and, frankly, how sophisticated the crime was perceived to be. The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office coordinated with, I think, 13 other agencies.
13 agencies?
Yeah, including a specialized search and recovery nonprofit called Bruce's Legacy.
Bruce's Legacy. Can you tell us a bit more about them? I think for our listener, understanding their specialty really highlights the challenge here.
Sure. Bruce Legacy is quite unique. They specialize in underwater and maritime recovery, specifically in really complex environments like Lake Michigan. Their involvement shows that law enforcement quickly realized the majority of Sade's remains had likely been deposited into the lake's vast, cold waters.
Making recovery incredibly difficult.
Extremely. You need specialized sonar, ROVs, divers experienced in those conditions. Conventional police searches just aren't equipped for that kind of large-scale maritime operation. Their expertise was vital.
And the search did, unfortunately, turn up more remains over time, didn't it?
Yes, tragically. The discovery stretched out for months, reinforcing the sheer brutality of the act and the killer's intent to scatter the evidence as widely as possible. On April 5th, a human foot was found near 31st and Galena, notably, quite close to where the car was burned. That created another physical link.
Okay.
Then, on April 18th, a torso and an arm washed ashore on a beach in South Milwaukee. And almost a month after that, May 11th, another human arm was discovered way down the shoreline at Waukegan Municipal Beach in Illinois.
Illinois. Wow. The currents really carried things far.
Exactly. Miles and miles down the coast. This detail, the widespread dismemberment and scattering, led the assistant district attorney to use that stark phrase, calling it the highest level of violence imaginable.
It suggests such an extreme psychological detachment, doesn't it? To carry out something so planned, so protracted, that level of concealment.
It really does.
Okay, let's shift focus to the man behind all this. Maxwell Stephen Anderson, 33 years old, longtime resident of Waukesha County, worked as a bartender, a job that, puts you in social contact with a lot of people.
Right. But Anderson wasn't just your average bartender. The source material we reviewed reveals a pretty significant decade-long history of instability, volatility, suggesting a pattern of aggressive behavior that definitely preceded the events of April 1st.
A pattern. What does that look like?
It's alarming, really. His record, stretching from 2014 right up to 2022, included convictions for drunk driving, disorderly conduct, and multiple domestic abuse charges. And we're not talking minor incidents here. We're talking about violent escalations.
Can we get specific? What kind of violent incidents are we talking about, just to give context to his character?
Yeah, the record shows a clear tendency towards explosive rage. For instance, back in 2019, he faced charges for an incredibly violent episode attacking his sister's boyfriend with a baseball bat.
Wow.
Then, in 2021, he was convicted after assaulting a man outside a bar, breaking the victim's nose. These aren't just isolated blow-ups, they paint a picture of physical volatility. That background was crucial context for the jury, even though the prosecution really leaned on the digital evidence trail.
His arrest came pretty quickly then, right? April 4th, just a couple of days after Sade went missing, during a traffic stop.
That's right. And he was initially tied to the crime by that single key piece of information from the witness at the car fire scene.
The gray hoodie and tan backpack.
Precisely. That description provided the direct link needed. The gray hoodie was later found in his vehicle, and it matched the clothing seen on footage from a Milwaukee County Transit System bus near where the Civic was burned. It was that physical clothing match that allowed them to get the search warrant for his home.
Okay, so let's talk about that search. His place on South 39th Street. What were investigators hoping to find, and what did they actually turn up?
Well, they found a scene that was deeply unsettling. It suggested violence had occurred, followed by a cleanup attempt. Detectives reported finding bloodstains on a comforter in one of the bedrooms, and also blood splatters on the walls leading down to the basement.
Okay, blood. That sounds significant.
It did initially. They also found several gasoline containers in the garage, connecting obviously to the arson charge, and there was a knife found in the kitchen sink. Plus, kind of conspicuously, a large black axe was just displayed on the living room wall. They were clearly hoping to find direct evidence of a struggle or the dismemberment or the cleanup process.
But here's where the narrative hits that major snag, right?
Yeah.
The forensic twist with the blood evidence, it wasn't what anyone expected.
Exactly. And this is where critical thinking for you, the listener, is so important. The initial excitement when blood was found must have been high. But then early forensic testing delivered this massive blow to the physical evidence side of the case. The blood found on the comforter, on the basement walls.
Yeah.
It was not Sade Robinson's DNA.
Not hers, so whose was it?
It was confirmed to be canine blood, dog blood.
Dog blood.
Yes. And this detail became the absolute cornerstone of the defense strategy.
I can see why.
Yeah. Defense attorney Anthony Cotton used this powerfully to argue reasonable doubt. He could say, look, the state cannot physically place the homicide inside Anderson's home. The implication for the jury was kind of twofold. First, maybe Anderson just owned a dog, and this was irrelevant, domestic animal blood. But second, and maybe more damningly for the prosecution's narrative, it suggested Anderson had done such an incredibly thorough, meticulous cleanup job that he successfully eliminated every single trace of Sade Robinson's DNA, leaving only unrelated animal DNA behind.
Which, ironically, points to extreme planning.
Exactly. Even while it frustrated the direct evidence link they were looking for.
So with no physical DNA proof placing her murder in the house, the prosecution was pushed back entirely onto that digital timeline. What about Anderson himself? What did he say during interrogation?
Well, Anderson exercised his constitutional rights. He immediately chose to remain silent, offered zero explanation for anything.
Nothing.
Nothing. No reason for Sade being at his house, no alibi for where he was when her phone GPS was pinging all over the city, no explanation for why he suddenly had her car and then set it on fire. His silence basically forced the prosecutors to rely solely on the indisputable facts of that digital timeline.
But his silence was sort of digitally contradicted, wasn't it, by that infamous text message?
Absolutely. The cover-up text, as the prosecution called it. At 10 a.m. on April 2nd, this is hours after the dismemberment, hours after he torched her car, hours after her phone battery died, Anderson sends a text message to Sade's now-dead phone asking, "How's your day going?"
Yeah.
Prosecutors argued this was just a calculated, almost transparent attempt to create a fake alibi, to suggest that, as far as he knew, she was alive and well at that late hour.
We should probably also address the claims made by that confidential informant. They were treated cautiously by the prosecution, but they added this really disturbing layer about alleged premeditation.
Right, the informant. This person claimed that back in March, weeks before the date with Sade, Anderson had allegedly confessed to them about planning to kill and dismember a woman in his basement.
Playing it.
That was the claim. The level of detail the informant provided was pretty unsettling. They claimed Anderson actually showed them his basement, and it was completely covered in plastic tarping ceiling, floor, walls, even a sanitation sink. And that Anderson told them he intended to use a gun for the killing.
A tarped basement, allegedly shown on March 5th. That's incredibly chilling, given what happened later. But if this pointed towards targeted premeditation, Why was the prosecution hesitant about using it?
Well, Assistant District Attorney Ian Vance Karen expressed, let's say, skepticism, mainly due to the lack of any corroboration for the informant's claims. Plus, there was no evidence suggesting any pre-existing targeted relationship between Anderson and Sade. It was essentially hearsay, and the defense could have attacked it strongly as maybe being manufactured or unreliable.
Makes sense.
However, it still kind of floated there, supporting the narrative that maybe Anderson had a pre-existing capacity or even intent for exactly this type of horrific crime.
So despite the forensic hurdles with the blood and the complexities around the informant's testimony, the charges filed on April 12th were severe. First-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson. They went for the full scope of his actions, and bail was set incredibly high, right? $5 million?
$5 million, yes, reflecting the severity and the flight risk perceived.
Okay, so the trial. State of Wisconsin versus Maxwell Anderson. It finally got underway in May 2025. This was the moment, really, where the full weight of all that digital data had to overcome the defense's challenges about the missing physical evidence.
Absolutely. And the prosecution strategy was essentially a masterclass in weaving together all that circumstantial evidence into a compelling narrative of intentional homicide.
How did they frame it?
They basically told the jury, the data proves the timeline, and the timeline proves the intent. Lead prosecutor Vance Karen's closing argument was just brutal in its simplicity. He said, the killer is him, the last person to be with her, the last one texting her, the last one whose residence she was at, the last one who had her car, the last one who had her phone. They methodically established his control over her person, her property, and her digital trace during that critical window.
And the defense, led by Anthony Cotton, they hammered home the lack of direct physical proof.
Exclusively. Their entire strategy was built on creating reasonable doubt. They just kept repeating. The state cannot produce a single drop of Sade Robinson's blood from inside that house. No definitive murder weapon was ever identified. And the official cause of death remained frustratingly vague. Homicide by unspecified means.
That cause of death issue, the medical examiner found it difficult.
Very difficult. Given the severe dismemberment and the fact that remains were recovered over months, the medical examiner, Dr. Lauren Decker, testified the autopsy process itself was very unusual. This forensic ambiguity actually became a tactical point for the defense regarding the homicide charge itself.
Right.
But it also meant the mutilation of a corpse charge became perhaps just as crucial. It proved Anderson's deliberate post-mortem actions were directly linked to concealing an intentional killing, even if the exact how of the killing was unclear.
Yet the prosecution did present some specific, very scrutinized evidence that kind of bypassed the need for blood or a weapon, didn't they? That photograph from his phone.
Ah, yes, the photograph. That was devastating evidence. It showed Sade face down on Anderson's couch, with his hand clearly visible on her back or shoulder.
How did each side spin that?
Well, the defense tried to argue it was just, consensual, maybe ambiguous, didn't prove anything sinister. But the prosecution used it very effectively to demonstrate Anderson's control and his presence right at the time of, or maybe immediately following, her death. It placed him directly with her at the moment she was incapacitated in his home. The jury basically had to decide, does that photo imply life, or does it imply death and control?
And ultimately, the sheer power of that accumulated digital footprint, the Life 360, the surveillance, the car's movements, it proved decisive. The jury deliberation time really tells the story.
It absolutely does. Just 45 minutes of deliberation spread across 2 days. I mean, that's stunningly fast for a first-degree intentional homicide trial. The jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict on all 3 counts on June 6, 2025. It just confirms that the digital timeline, the GPS tracks, the surveillance footage, the jury saw it as an absolutely airtight case. It was impervious to those reasonable doubt arguments the defense made about the lack of traditional physical DNA evidence.
So after the conviction, what were the legal consequences for Anderson?
He received the mandatory life sentence without any possibility of parole on August 1st, 2025. He's currently incarcerated at Dodge Correctional Institution. That swift maximum sentence really reflects how heinous and intentional the jury and the court viewed his crimes to be.
But even with the conviction, the life sentence, that core question remains, doesn't it? The motive was never established. The exact method of murder is still unknown.
And that absence of a clear motive is what makes this case so deeply unsettling, I think. It forces us, and you, the listener, to grapple with the reality that such extreme, sustained violence, the kind of premeditation implied by the meticulous cleanup, the long drive, the calculated disposal, can seemingly occur without any apparent catalyst, no relationship history, no prior animosity that we know of.
It suggests something entirely internal, some switch flipped into extreme violence.
Exactly. Based on factors we can only speculate about, which is terrifying.
In the face of just this incomprehensible tragedy, though, the community and Sade's family, their response has been incredibly powerful, turning grief into advocacy.
The support was immediate and massive. You saw that really emotional pink out memorial pink was Sade's favorite color that had just spontaneously appeared on Anderson's front lawn after his arrest. And there's a mural of Sade Robinson now near the entrance of Pizza Shuttle where she worked. It really cements her memory in the city's landscape.
And her legacy is continuing beyond just remembrance, right? It's moving into trying to create systemic change.
Yes. Sade's Voice Foundation was established in her memory, focused on promoting safety awareness. And importantly, her family's pursuit of justice didn't end with the criminal conviction. They've filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Maxwell Anderson, aiming for civil liability. And significantly, they're also pursuing civil action against the bars, Victor's and Duke's on Water, arguing that those establishments improperly served Anderson alcohol that night, contributing to the events. They're trying to broaden the circle of accountability.
Their reaction to the verdict really captured the enduring pain, didn't it? Something like, there's no such thing as justice, we don't have her.
Yeah. Justice in these cases means accountability, absolutely, but it can never mean restoration. The loss remains. #outro.
So this deep dive into the Sade Robinson case, it's yielded some really crucial insights, especially for you, the listener, thinking about crime and evidence today. I think the primary takeaway has to be the overwhelming power of that modern digital trail.
Absolutely. Life 360, surveillance cameras, phone activity. It transformed what could have been a frustratingly complex crime with limited physical evidence into a successful prosecution, even when traditional forensic evidence like DNA hit a dead end.
And it really underscores the need for critical thinking when we look at forensic analysis, doesn't it? We saw how the defense cleverly used that canine blood discovery to argue against the murder happening in the house.
Right, and the prosecution had to pivot. They successfully argued that the overwhelming digital timeline basically negated the need for human DNA at that specific scene. They proved intent through movement, through control, rather than relying on, the proverbial smoking gun.
This case is also just a stark reminder of the sophisticated lengths criminals might go to conceal what they've done. Cleaning evidence so thoroughly that only animal DNA is left, systematically scattering remains across miles of lake.
The level of calculation is chilling.
And finally, we're left with that haunting, unresolved question, the motive, the absence of a confirmed murder weapon. For you, the listener, the really unsettling conclusion might be that extreme premeditation, extreme violence, can be triggered by factors completely internal, completely unknown to the victim, even on something as seemingly normal as a first date. The question that lingers is, what specific preventative safety checks, beyond just sharing your location, which Sade did, can actually be effective against that kind of hidden, unpredictable volatility? It's a difficult question.
It truly is. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth exploration of the devastating consequences when digital safety nets tragically intersect with unpredictable violence. We really appreciate you taking the time to delve into the details of this incredibly important case with us.